This is Arise News from Abuja, Nigeria, and you're watching Thisday live with me, Charles Aniagolu. Now, one of the world's most valuable individual prizes given annually to former African leaders to encourage good governance on the continent has again been withheld for the second year in a row because no one was found worthy of the prize. The selection committee said none of the recently retired heads of state in Africa had merited the prize. Sudanese businessman Mo Ibrahim set up the $5 million prize in 2006 to be awarded each year to an elected leader who governed well, raised living standards, and then left office. This is the sixth time in its 11-year history that there's been no winner. Over the years, the Ibrahim Prize has been awarded to few leaders, most notably the former president of South Africa, Nelson Mandela. Well, to discuss this in more detail, I'm joined in the studio by political analyst Lindsay Barrett. Thanks for coming in. So no winner again for the second year running for the Mo Ibrahim Prize for Achievement in African Leadership because according to the selection committee, none of the recently retired heads of state in Africa merited the prize. Your reaction to that?
Well, the Mo Ibrahim Prize set a very high bar for leaders, especially since it is offered to leaders after they've spent time in office. It's not a competition as such. When they're in office, they are not asked to do specific things. It's the nature of their performance that is judged in absentia, so to speak, after they've left. What is the consequence of their leadership?
So you think that perhaps the bar was too high, a bit unrealistic in a continent that's still in the early stages of democratic development?
No, I don't think the bar is too high. In fact, if I have, and not only I, but other people have said, maybe the prize should be awarded not only to leaders, but to people who work in society. Maybe this prize should be offered to some young people who have made efforts outside of government.
I suppose the reason is because the big critical issue that's often mentioned in Africa is the problem of leadership.
Yes, but it seems strange to me to ask leaders to remember their behavior in the hope that they'll pick up some fortune in future.
Well, I mean, I don't think that the idea is for them to do it in a competitive... I mean, the idea is to look in retrospect at the time you've spent in office and assess your time there.
Yes, and when the committee decided recently that none of those who left office recently deserved it, one has to look at what, as I say, the bar, what the criteria is. And I think they're quite right to say nobody in recent times has made the kind of impact of those who they gave the prize to before.
Because, of course, one of them is Nelson Mandela.
Yes, naturally.
A tough act to follow.
Nobody is going to follow that. But at the same time, it is good that they have set this criteria because those who are still in office have, there are some people, for example, here in West Africa, we look at the performance of people like the present president of Liberia. She could be considered in future because she has made such a change in her country and so many others. So I think that the whole idea of saying nobody among the recent former presidents have deserved this allows people to look again at what needs to be done.
Right, of course.
But there's also one thing we must say, Charles. The committee that set the
bar
is known. The chairman is a former Secretary General of the OAU.
Right.
And some other very highly respected people. So the question is, what does this award suggest for Africa? Are we still, nation building, so to speak?
Well, clearly Africa is. I understand that since it was started in 2006, only 4 African leaders have actually won it, which means that no one got it in 6 years. Now, this time around, as you were hinting there, Nigeria's Goodluck Jonathan, of course, a potential contender, as well as Ghana's John Mahama, Tanzania's Jakaya Kikwete. None of them qualified, even though they all handed over peacefully to their successors. But then they've all been tarred with corruption allegations, and the committee said none of them left a legacy worth rewarding. I mean, do you agree with that assessment?
Well, I don't agree that everything they did was either correct or incorrect. I think they may have tried their best. But what the committee seems to be saying is we need a cleaner break between the old and the new. What this committee seems to suggest is that the old African syndrome of life presidency is something that we have to get away from. And even though those presidents you've mentioned did not participate or suggest at any point that they would try to hang on to power.
Right.
The main thing is now the committee is looking at your performance in office, not only whether you are prepared to hand over. So the bar is being raised high.
Right. So beyond this particular prize, I mean, as we mentioned earlier, a lot of, a big concern in Africa is the quality of leadership. Is it your sense that, broadly speaking, African leaders have fallen short of expectations?
It may be dangerous for me to say yes, but yes.
Right. In what way? I mean, I suppose that's a very broad question. I mean,
Yes.
but you can pick out 1 or 2 examples.
I believe that many African leaders are stymied by local political issues, and we have fallen very short of solving some of these. Right now, for example, we can see what's happening in South Africa with the xenophobic attacks and so on, and it seems to me that African leadership is still falling short of carrying the people along.
Right. So is it your sense that, for example, what is going on in South Africa is the government there trying to sort of move attention away from what they ought to be doing, which is providing jobs for the local people?
No, I don't think they are doing it deliberately, but I think that their lack of efficiency in some things has led to the crisis.
So what's the solution to that sort of problem?
Well, I guess the solution is better governance, which is what the Mo Ibrahim Foundation seems to want.
Okay, Lindsay Barrett, the political analyst, thank you very much indeed. Well, to Russia now, where across the country the pro-life movement is growing in influence. It espouses nationalist and orthodox values and is embraced both by religious groups and government agencies. Naira Davla-Shayan reports.
When Anna became pregnant, she was terrified. Already with 1 child, but with no home, money or support from her family, she booked an abortion. But a pro-life activist told her there might be another option.
I said I had no other choice. Where will I get the money to raise a second child? His father rejected him. How can we live with no money and no home? Where? She replied, Anna, wait a little. We'll think of something.
Now she and her 2 children live in the mother's house that supports moms and moms-to-be. The home was opened in 2012 by an anti-abortion group inspired by patriotic and orthodox values.
Если мы, опять же, повторюсь, хотим быть страной,
The security of our state depends on what sort of population we
у
have.
нас население зависит наша безопасность нашего государства.
If we want to be able to defend our country, we must restore traditional family values.
Повторюсь, именно этим термином институт нашей традиционной семьи, как это было всегда на Руси.
This seminar about the morning after pill is for aspiring teachers. In the last 20 years, abortion rates in Russia have dropped by 80% due to easily available contraception. Last year, conservative lawmakers called to end state health insurance from covering terminations. The bill was ultimately dropped, but women's rights activists are worried about the rising anti-abortion lobby.
Abortion prevention, as some officials see it, talking the woman out of an abortion and making her keep an unwanted child, is similar to torture. We are absolutely against it.
Influenced by the Orthodox Church, the government tripled the number of abortion prevention centers over the past 3 years. It says around 39,000 women have already reconsidered having an abortion.
To Nicaragua, and people who are hearing impaired are being offered the chance to work as waiters, cooks and baristas thanks to a new initiative in Granada. The Café de las Sonrisas is helping its staff overcome the fear of rejection and of being mocked. It's being seen as a positive step towards integrating disabled people further into Nicaraguan society. Now let's take a look at the stories making the headlines in some of the world's leading national newspapers this Wednesday morning with our news analyst, John Fashanu.
Good afternoon, sir.
Hello, John.
Good day, I think is better.
Actually, yeah.
Yes.
Let's start with Thisday newspaper.
Yes. Well, Charles, not a particularly good story, but it's an enlightening story. This is South African government deports 97 Nigerians. Now,
Right.
Charles, this is after having our houses...
Needs to tilt the camera up there a bit, and it's a bit out of focus. Tilt up, that's the story further up. There we are. South African government
Wonderful.
deports 97
That's
Nigerians. It's out of focus, but we won't worry too much about that, will we? There we are. We
That's
can see it now.
We've got it. Well, Charles, it's a little bit worrying because apart from having houses which are being burnt and being chased out of houses in South Africa, the South African government are now deporting Nigerians. Is it fair?
Well, I don't know. I mean, obviously, if somebody commits a crime, then they ought to be punished for their
Well,
crime.
let's have a look at the statistics. I've got here, after analysing the newspapers, we've got drug offences, 6 deported. Criminal offences, out of the 97 offences, are only 10. So we've actually got 95 males who've been deported and 2 ladies.
Right. But when you say a minimum of criminal, what are the rest of them accused of?
Well, that's blank at the moment. There's no
Right.
information to suggest it otherwise. You know, that's why I was saying, is it fair?
Right.
Because it seems at the moment that there's a lot of horrible things going on in South Africa. And it might be time the National Assembly and the South African Parliament came together and let's find a way out of this.
Yeah.
Because this is something which has been going on, Charles, for years and years and years. It's not new.
Perhaps more importantly, the Nigerian Foreign Office ought to be, the Foreign Ministry ought to be I mean, this could lead to a major diplomatic spat, and at
Certainly.
the very least, they've got to have information on what is actually going on. But let's move on.
Yes.
The next newspaper, by coincidence, is South Africa.
South Africa, by
Yeah.
coincidence, yes. This is Rogue Cops on the Beat.
And that's the Star newspaper.
That's the Star newspaper. Now, this is interesting again, Charles, because here we have police officers who are actually going about their jobs. One has been convicted for rape, multiple cases of rape, and 2 of